All right, we are recording. So guys, thanks again for joining us on our, third Lunch and Learn, virtual Lunch and Learn. And today we have an awesome guest that's going to be leading us, Melanie Everett. Melanie is an award-winning real estate broker and founder of her own boutique real estate firm in the city of Chicago. Most of us in the city of Chicago know who she is. Her accolades are, she was 30 under 30, nominated by the National Association of Realtors. She frequently gets asked to speak a lot, both locally and nationally. So she's obviously an influential person. And obviously us who know her in Chicago know she's an integrous person, right? That does the right thing and has built a great business. So we're honored to have her on the call. So Melanie, thanks for virtually being here right now. Appreciate you.
Oh, no, excited to be here.
Awesome, cool. So guys, remember the rules of the game is you can keep the chat going in the chat room. If you have any questions for Melanie, I will do my best to keep my eye on that. And if you have any questions that you would like me to ask her while she's talking, I will definitely do my best to do that. Melanie are going to just kind of wrap here for about 25 minutes, and then we're going to open up to some question and answers on what's going on out there. All right. So a quote, Melanie, when you and I talked a couple days ago, and I appreciate you taking the time. A quote that that I thought of after you and I talked was, "Investment in knowledge pays the best interest." That was by Ben Franklin. So you have built a business off of seminars, right? And you built a business off of education and educating people. So I would like you to kind of walk us through really quickly, pre-pandemic, what was your business like, and what was your strategy that you were doing to build the business that you did?
I forgot that there was a pre-pandemic. Okay, so I started teaching the first-time buyer classes in fall of 2015. So that was after I had been in real estate for just about 1 year. And my lender, Chris Kinsella, and I were just chatting, trying to figure out something to do to get leads, blah, blah, blah. And we knew a lot of brokers were doing first-time homebuyer classes. So we wanted to do something like that, but make it more millennial friendly, something that people would want to go to and wouldn't feel so much as a chore, but something that they actually chose to do. So we came up with our class and we called it So You Want to Buy a Condo. And we started by teaching it at bars, and we did that a couple times, and then eventually started teaching it at WeWork, which in 2016 was a little bit newer still to the city, so kind of a novel thing. And people were excited about coming into a WeWork space, and we would provide drinks, and we'd go through our presentation and meet people, and the crowds over the past couple of years just got bigger and bigger. So we had maybe 20 people come out in the beginning, and then at the height of the seminars probably had about 100 people come. So it was definitely, and it is definitely, the biggest lead source for me. A lot of people that come to the class, they're not necessarily going to buy this year, they're not going to buy like right after they come, but it's more of a long-term tracking system where I'm following up with them, and I put them in a drip campaign, and it's kind of just similar to open houses. Like, you meet someone at an open house, they're not going to buy the place tomorrow. They're probably going to buy something in a year and come back to you. So that was kind of the same idea with the seminars.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, so what you're saying is you're building trust with these people, right? Over time. Cause we all know that I think the stat is 18 months, right? Is when somebody first starts saying, I'm going to buy a house, till they actually do close. So for you, your strategy here was, hey, I'm going to get in front of people who are interested in buying a condo, whether it's now or sometime over the next couple of years, and I'm going to stay in touch with them.
Exactly.
And Melanie, what system did you have in place how you stayed in touch with them? So obviously you were having a lot of seminars and you were having people come, and sometimes in excess of 100 people. What system did you use to stay in touch with these people?
Well, at first I had no system, and learned very quickly that I needed to be tracking those people and like making sure I stayed in touch. So eventually the system evolved to be, we get RSVPs, we get first name, last name, email, and then optional phone number. So we get that from everybody that signs up. probably half of those people actually come to the class. It doesn't really matter how many people actually show up on the day of it. We just want their email to show that they were interested and that they registered. Um, and then from there, after they come, I'll send them a follow-up thank you email, pretty simple. And then I put them in a 10-week drip campaign on MailChimp that is basically just like an informational, every single week they get a nugget of information that was taught at the class. And then after that 10-week drip campaign, I tell them I'm moving them into my monthly newsletter campaign, and then they stay on the monthly newsletter. So MailChimp is probably my best tool for that, just because it allows me to really seamlessly move people from like one campaign to the next. And yeah, it served me pretty well as far as staying on top of people.
So that's awesome, Melanie. So you had a strategy, right? You implemented a system. You used this tool MailChimp to help support that system, right? And the win was you were building relationships and building a brokerage, building a massive brokerage business just by holding these seminars. Is that correct? Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So let's talk about cost. Okay, so obviously you were renting out bars, you were renting out places, having food, having drink there. How did you manage the cost for there? And if you're comfortable sharing with us, what kind of costs were you looking at to hold these seminars?
That's a really good question. So when we did it at bars initially, that was probably the most expensive it ever was, because we had to pay not for the space, but we'd have to pay the tab at the end of the night. And everybody knows that you buy something at a bar, it's always more expensive than if you were to drink it at home. So eventually, when we started doing the WeWork seminars, we got the space for free, which was amazing, because at the time WeWork was getting big in Chicago. One of my good friends worked on staff at WeWork, so she was able to like give us that connection. And we were then using the WeWork spaces for free. And the return for WeWork was that they were getting all of these people coming into their spaces and getting their name out there more. So it was kind of a win-win situation. So no cost for the space at WeWork. And then we were just paying for alcohol. So we would just get a couple bottles of wine as cheaply as we could without getting really bad wine or anything like that. And a couple cases of beer, no food or anything. And then we just had to pay for the Facebook ads. So Facebook ads is probably the #1 way I get people to come to the seminar. And that's the most expensive part of all of it. And depending on the month, we'd spend like a couple hundred on the ads, all the way up to a couple thousand on the ads. So that is probably the biggest cost. And then the rest of it is just really for alcohol. And now I have a WeWork office, so I do pay monthly dues to WeWork. So it's not technically free anymore, but in the beginning it was.
And Melanie, what was the feedback that you were getting from the consumers on this? Like, what were the wins and what were some of the losses? And if you were to do it again, what would you, again, remember, we're talking pre-pandemic, what would you have done differently?
Let's see, the feedback, it was pretty positive initially. I think that my public speaking skills really changed over the years. And even now, like, I do not consider myself a very good public speaker. I'm literally nervous on this Zoom call, which is so like silly. But
Melanie, it's just you and I.
I'm looking at Sam Powell's face and all these other faces, and oh my gosh, no pressure. But yeah, so like public speaking does not come naturally to me, and it's really something that I have to like psych myself up for before an event. So I think that if ever I had negative feedback, it was maybe people saying like I didn't seem super confident in the beginning, or I was a little nervous, or things like that. We never had people tell us that we were too salesy or anything, because really the whole like purpose of the presentation was to be as not salesy as we possibly could be. And that's kind of tough to do, because obviously we want the people to work with us at the end of it, but it's just it's kind of like a fine line that you have to walk, like selling yourself and also providing information and so on and so forth. So and then other than that, I'm trying to think of what other feedback.
What about
Really good.
What about
Go
ROI?
ahead.
Did you track your ROI on this? Did you have an understanding of what this was going to cost, or was it just more, hey, I'm building relationships?
No, I've never really tracked ROI, so my mind doesn't really think that way.
Okay.
I totally should. And Yeah, I don't
Sam
know.
Powell can teach you that. She's
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I love you.
Love you.
So okay, so tracking the ROI, but and then so overall it was positive, and what you could have learned was, hey, you became a better speaker, but you did it, right? I mean, how challenging that was for you, of you saying, hey, I wasn't the best public speaker, right? But you did take this leap of faith and you did do it. How did you overcome that?
How did I overcome it? A lot of practice by knowing the content like the back of my hand. That really helps. And then just trying to trust God in that situation as much as possible and letting the words come out and just not putting too much pressure on myself in the moment. So public speaking, like, it's something that anybody can do, I think. It just requires like a ton of you knowing your topic and kind of having like a routine that works for you. Even Chris, who I speak with, like in the beginning, he was always kind of shaky and like definitely seemed a little bit more nervous. But now if you see Chris talk, you're like, holy cow, I'm watching a professional. It's really amazing.
Right, that's great. How did you prep for these?
What do you mean?
How did you, so like, how, when you knew you were going to do a first time home seminar, or first time home buyer seminar, if somebody out here is listening to this and they want to do one, what advice would you give them of, hey, this is how you prep for this?
Well, anybody can do these. It's super, I think, attainable. You just need to figure out a good space to have it and then figure out a way of marketing it that's going to work for you. But I would say just getting a really solid presentation together that doesn't go too into the weeds on anything. Like, you don't need to explain all the loopholes involved in earnest money and so on and so forth. You can keep it really high level and just provide people enough information that they need to know, without overwhelming them with so much content that it's just too much.
Okay, got it. All right, so Melanie, now our world has changed, right? It's fair to say that. So what was it, 10, 14 days ago, something like that. Obviously, how we're going to conduct business and how we're going to move forward, right? We're all going to have tenacity. We're all going to get through this because that's who we are, right? But at the end of the day, we're going to have to shift, right? So let's talk about just seminars right now, and then we're going to talk about what you're doing kind of personally. But
Okay.
as far as just your seminars, how do you see them moving forward, and what have you done to change your seminars now moving forward? And have you had one that has been virtual, and what have been the success from that?
Sure. So we had one scheduled for last Wednesday. This was pre all the corona stuff starting to come up in our country, but we booked it like early March, and it was going to be at WeWork last week, and I was really, really struggling to get signups for it. I had maybe like 10 people RSVP, and I had spent $1,500 on ads at that point. So it really was starting to frustrate me. Like, what was wrong? Why couldn't I get people to sign up? And then, like, as the weeks went on and all the COVID stuff started to come out, Chris and I kind of freaking out and thinking like, okay, nobody's going to come now. We have to figure out a plan B. So we just kind of abruptly decided that we were going to change it to a webinar. And I changed the Facebook ad and put another couple $100 into it. And I started promoting it all over my like personal Instagram and trying to push it as much as I could to just friends and people that knew me. And then by the end of that week of advertising it, we had 160 people signed up, which was incredible. I haven't had that many people sign up for a seminar in a long time. And then,
well, and you said at your tops, the ones in person, you had at the tops, it was around 100. I know probably more registered, but 100 attendees, right?
100 attendees, yeah, at the most. But lately, in the past few years, it hasn't been like 100 showing up to every seminar, just because now there's a lot more competition and every other brokerage offers classes. So it's not like we're the only ones doing seminars anymore. So I came to just get comfortable. No, they didn't. That's the thing. I stole all their brokers' idea. I didn't invent the home buyer seminar by any means. But it just became a lot more competitive to get signups or whatever. But I would be happy if I had 50 people show up to seminar. But I wasn't happy with having 10 people sign up for the live one. So anyways, we get 160 people sign up for the webinar. And then the night of the webinar last Wednesday, we had 90 people tune in at the peak of it, which was, I thought, really incredible. And just showed that people still want to learn. And I kind of had to be as sensitive as I could on the webinar itself and just kind of say, like, I don't know what's going to happen in our state and world and this and that, and just be as real as I could about like the current economic situation. But I think it went really, really well. We got good feedback from it. I did not get anyone email me the next day and say, hey, I'm ready to start a search or anything like that. I wasn't expecting it. I don't think that's going to happen for a little bit, but yeah, it was definitely a great success in our book.
That's awesome, Melanie, and congrats on that, because you pivoted quickly, right? And obviously had a very successful event. What, you said you were very real with people, and you said you didn't know. What were some of the questions, or what was your biggest aha from this first webinar that you took from this, not really knowing what the world's going to look like in the next couple of weeks?
We didn't get a ton of questions about like the COVID stuff, or, if now's a good time to buy or anything like that. I kind of addressed that in the beginning of the webinar and just said, I didn't know, and I don't have the answer for all of those questions. And I know they're going to come up, but it's just not something that I'm going to go out there and be like, yes, now's the time to buy, or no, because I have no idea. If I was a buyer, I don't know that I'd be buying anything right now. But yeah, so I just kind of like gave that coverall in the beginning. And then the questions that we got were just the typical ones that we'll get at any presentation. So asking us to expound on inspection and contract stuff and down payment things and stuff like that. So it was a very interactive webinar for sure. And just, yeah, better than I could have hoped for.
Okay, that's great. So, okay, moving forward. All right. So now we see that this is our new reality. What, again, going back to what system are you going to put in place, right? And what strategy is going to be? It's probably the same strategy, right? And then now how is your system going to pivot, and what tools are you going to use moving forward?
So my system is pretty much the same so far. I thanked everybody for coming the next day. And then I told them I was adding them to this drip. The drip will start this Friday. They'll get on that drip, and then they'll go into my monthly newsletter campaign. So not a ton of change, because I think my follow-up was already like pretty digital and as clean as it could possibly be. But probably the biggest change is just the pivot to the actual webinar format.
All right. Well, a couple of people have thrown some questions up here on the chat, so I'm gonna ask these questions. Brian Moon asked, "What software did you use for the webinar?"
Webinar Jam, because I think it's the cheapest.
Yeah, awesome. And you're happy with Webinar Jam?
Yeah, it's okay. It does the job.
It does the job. It's built it
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
All right. Josh Weinberg says, Melanie, has Facebook ads been the most successful way to get in front of the people that you don't know?
Hey, Josh. Yeah, Facebook ads for sure is the most effective with getting just like totally random Chicago renters to sign up. I think sometimes we end up getting like really cold leads from Facebook that aren't necessarily my target, like first time home buyer, and maybe it's somebody that just saw an ad for, free drinks or whatever and signed up on a whim to like go to something or sign up for something. So it's kind of hard, because we definitely have to vet them the best we can and just hope that we're getting quality leads from it. The best leads come from past clients that will send their friends to the seminars. That's what like is probably I think the most effective, when somebody kind of has a warm connection to me already and then they come to the seminar, and then it almost just like validates in their minds like, oh, okay, yeah, she is somebody that I want to work with. She knows the process or whatever. But it's definitely a mix. It's not like it's all Facebook or all referrals.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go, guys, just so the audience, so I'm going to go back up to the top and ask the questions. So, and by the way, Barry says you're doing great, and public speaking is a huge fear of you. But
thanks, Barry.
She's on the hot seat tomorrow, so we'll see how she does.
I'll be watching.
She's going to do great as well. What are the topics you touch upon while presenting? When you have a first-time homebuyer seminar, is it just first-time homebuyer seminar, or do you go through the whole process?
We start by talking generally about why most people decide to buy their first place. And then we talk really quickly about the Chicago market and seasonality and things like that. Then I pass the mic to Chris, and Chris talks about getting pre-approved, why you need to be pre-approved. He talks about what your interest rate looks like and how they determine it. He talks about down payments, closing costs, kind of all like the big questions that people always want to know about mortgages. And truly, Chris's content is the most important content. I always joke at the seminar that my stuff is just the fluff that bookends the presentation.
Right.
But the most people need to know is the mortgage stuff, because it's like they don't ever teach a class in college or high school like mortgage 101. It's really new territory for people. So that's definitely like the bulk of the middle of the presentation. And then I take the mic again and I talk about agency. I talk about what an agent does and why people use an agent. I talk about how our team's search process works. And then I talk about once you find a place, how to make an offer, how to navigate attorney review. And I try to keep everything as concise as possible. And then we do questions at the end.
And you're still in webinars moving forward. This is what you're going to do, right? It's going to be the same flow. You're still, the strategy is still the same. It's going to be the same flow where you're just doing it virtually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the exact same presentation last Wednesday, just webinar form.
Okay, cool. Well, your newest 30 under 30 inductee, Jordan Pyle, has a question for you as well. You know,
Congrats, Jordan.
Melanie, are you still finding that email is the best method of communication for your follow-up? Do you feel things are going to move towards text campaigns, and how are you planning to pivot the webinars and the way of communicating with the people in a more digital age?
That's a really good question. I have not had great success with text follow-up. One, because the sign up, it's an optional cell phone thing. Like you don't have to put your number in there. So a lot of people don't. Maybe it's like 50-50. And two, I just feel like people are more annoyed if they get a random text from somebody than they are if they get a random email from somebody. So I try to err on the side of like caution in that sense and stick to email. And then obviously, like if somebody's a client or we have a relationship, then we switch to text just because that's easier. But I mostly plan to just keep it email based until that doesn't work anymore.
So, all right. So Fair Hinton asked this, and you might have just touched on that. Have you done any Instagram ads, and how have they worked for you?
I have done Instagram ads. They don't work as well for me as like organic Instagram does. So what I mean by organic is like if I can just post on my story and have my team post on their stories a couple times in the month leading up to the seminar and then have a link to it in our bio, we end up getting a lot of people just that kind of know us through somebody or maybe went to high school or college with us or something like that. Because the other thing is that my entire social sphere is a potential first-time buyer. Most people my age don't really own places yet. It's still kind of like we're renting and well, a lot of them are renting and just trying to decide what their next steps are. So I'll get a lot of just like people that I know because I'm from the suburbs. So I'll get a lot of like people that I grew up with and people I went to college with sign up and things like that. So those are really effective signups are like the people that already kind of know me but don't know me professionally per se.
Melanie, this is more of a question just for clarity. So you've been 2014, was it?
Yeah.
The business to 2014. So you're still primarily working for still working with first-time home buyers. Have you seen that start to transition now that you've been there in 6 years, that you're getting more sellers or you're getting these people that are now selling?
Sort of. I mean, I've definitely gotten more listings in the past 2 years than I've had. But listings are really hard and it's still kind of uncharted territory for me. I feel so much more comfortable with buyers. And I know that'll probably change with time. And I've definitely been looking to a lot of experienced brokers for advice in listing situations. But yeah, it's definitely starting to turn over. I've like sold a lot of places that my buyers have bought with me, which feels really good. But then I've also seen it happen where I lose those buyers that bought with me and they go sell with Redfin. So yeah, it's kind of I guess a mix.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of people on this call that I know would sit down with you and help you with any listing questions that you have. So myself included. So Josh has a follow-up question. What has been the most successful way to get people through the seminar in general? Is it through your follow-up touch?
Josh, what exactly do you mean by that?
Unmute yourself, J-Dubs.
What up?
What up?
You're rocking it as always. No, what I'm saying is like, I know that you were saying through Facebook you were getting some like colder leads. Like, what are you doing to actually get people there? What has been the best way to actually get people in the seats? Because I know you're probably getting people who are responding saying they're in. Is it your like touch program to follow up with them, or like what are you doing to actually get them to come? Whether including your spear.
Yeah. Well, so once they sign up, there's no guarantee that they're going to come. That's the hard thing. And I usually expect half of the people that sign up will actually show up. All I do is I send a reminder email the day before, or not the day before, the morning of, and I just say, hey, looking forward to seeing you guys. Here's the details, blah, blah, blah. And that's really it. So there's not a lot of pre-follow-up before the presentation actually happens. It's more after the fact, once I have all of the signups, that I follow up with those emails.
Elizabeth just asked, what do you communicate to those that sign up prior to the seminar? For example, do you send them any info prior to the seminar and simple reminders for it? Do you put those who don't attend on the same drip campaign as well?
Good question. So yeah, same thing as what I said to the previous question, but no real follow-up before other than reminders day of. And then afterwards, I have no way of knowing who actually showed up and who didn't. So I just email everybody like a mass thank you, and just try to thank them for signing up and for showing interest in the event, and not necessarily thank you for coming, just because I don't know like who came and who didn't. But I keep everybody on the drip campaigns.
Molly, given the success of your first virtual, pivoting from a first digital educational seminar, are you excited about the ones to come? Are you more excited now? Are you scared, or what's your take on that?
I think I don't know that I would necessarily say I'm excited, because I like doing the in-person ones better. You can like jive with the audience more when you're in person versus when you're on a webinar. You can't see people's faces, you can't see reactions, and I think it's a lot more pressure, just like hoping that they're paying attention and they're liking you. But I do think like the number of signups I got is really encouraging, and if I keep doing webinars and get double the signups, then maybe it's just worth it to go the webinar route. I don't really know. I'm just trying to like take it month by month and see what happens.
Yeah, or maybe switching them, when this all passes, maybe switching them back and forth, right?
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
Nico says, you have such a wonderfully authentic brand. I agree with him 100%. I was diving into, more history about you, and your presence is awesome, right? How have you been able to develop that?
Thanks, Nico. Develop it. I don't know how I've developed it. Because it's like, it's just my brand or whatever is like stuff I like. So my Instagram is really a reflection of me as a person. And I just try to keep everything like as me as possible. Like everything is written in my own voice and my own words, everything from like a listing caption to, or a listing description to like writing about a buyer after they close. So I just try to keep it as like authentic as I can. And I also have like an aesthetic for sure. So I like the prettier pictures and the prettier filters and things like that.
For those of us who know you well, yes, it's very authentic, right? And it's very you, right? So I love that answer to that. Molly Mudd here has asked, what keywords, demographics do you use to target with your Facebook ads?
That's a really good question, because Facebook has cracked down a ton on advertising. If you guys do any Facebook ads, you probably know that now we're in what's called the special housing category, which basically like limits the amount that we can advertise to people. So I used to be able to specify like, I want to be promoting to people that live in this zip code in Chicago and that are newly engaged or newly married or so on and so forth. Like I had so many more filters that I could put on the search. Now with this special housing category, you have to say, you can only do a really broad radius. You can't narrow down the age range, and you're just like super limited on what you can do. So now basically I just give Facebook the money, and then I let them figure out who to show the ad to versus me trying to control it on my end and like trying to narrow it down as much as possible. Facebook ads is like a constant learning curve for me. And now I have a coach, so I have some help on that end, but it took me a long time to find a good coach for Facebook ads. And it's still something that it's like an ongoing project for me.
When you were holding your glass, it looked like you had a glass of wine in your hand. I was going to ask you what you were drinking. All
In
right,
the
guys.
middle of the day. I guess people are doing that in quarantine. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people. Hey, so I thought Sam was at a bar in Key West, but it looks
That's
like
right.
go off. So I'm gonna open this.
There's a kegerator right there.
Do me a
Wow.
nothing wrong with a shot of whiskey at noon basis. Hey, so I'm gonna open this up. Just do me a favor though. Go to the Zoom chat and ask if you have a question or a comment that you want to say, and I'm gonna call on you. So Sam, do me a favor and unmute yourself, and then ask your question that you have put in the chat here.
Oh, you're so sweet. I never muted myself. I don't like that game. Just kidding. So Melanie, my question was, now that you're in this sort of digital space and you're not able to offer adult beverages, for lack of a better term, have you considered offering something like incentivize the attendees in a way, some kind of discounted inspection perhaps, some, just like when we have open houses, we find the best way to get our peers in is to offer some kind of raffle, some kind of gift card. And since we can send electronic gift cards and you have email addresses, I just wanted to propose that maybe a concept of a way to get people in the door in this interesting time we have is offering some gift cards, maybe 3 or 5 or whatever, but some kind of draw that gets some more attention for you.
No, I had never considered that, but I think that's brilliant. And I definitely want to do something like that. That's a really good idea.
Well, you can work with your attorney, of course, maybe a discount if they use your attorney, a discount if they use your home inspector. And some lenders are able to offer like a discount in closing costs. So you might be able to have those layers plus, monetary gift cards.
Love that. So smart.
Yeah, that's great, Sam. That's a great idea. Sierra, are you you want to unmute yourself and ask your question here?
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so my question was about the drip campaign. Did you hire a professional to set it up? And does the people who signed up for that, for your event, are they automatically transferred to your MailChimp account? Or are you, or do you have to do it, I guess, manually?
Good question. I set up the drip campaigns myself and just kind of learned MailChimp over time. And then once people sign up, I have to like manually put them into the drip campaign and then manually move them into the next one. So I just have to like stay on top of it and remind myself to do it as much as I can.
And Melanie, there's 3 of you on your team?
Mm-hmm.
Is there 3? And how is your, what's your organization chart look like? You're obviously the rainmaker, and then what are the other 2 doing for you?
So they are both buyers agents primarily. So my job is to get the buyers and then I get to disperse the buyers. So it's amazing. I have full confidence that when I hand off a lead, that lead will be taken care of so well, the same exact way I would do it, but even better. So it really, I think, provides a lot of peace of mind on my end. And then I'm still working with buyers, but just less of them. And I'm trying to more pick buyers that live in, like, so I live in Lincoln Park, and I'm trying to just work with buyers in Lincoln Park or friends, and just trying to like cherry pick a little bit more rather than drive all over the city and trek everybody.
Yeah, well, your time, right? Your time's important. So, so what's your role then? Are you coming up with a lot of this content? Are you just focusing on the seminars? What's your one thing that you're focusing on right now?
I think that at all times, my number one role is like the marketing side of things and to bring in the leads. And I mean, I definitely expect that my 2 brokers also contribute and are bringing in like their friends and people that they know in their spheres and so on and so forth. But my like greatest joy in life is being able to like create the content and come up with fun ideas and like think of cool Instagram things. And like, I just really enjoy that kind of stuff. I enjoy the writing side of things. I don't as much enjoy like closing the deals. So, I mean, I love deals just as much as the next person, but like, that's not my number one motivator. You know what I mean? So I'd rather like be behind the scenes and kind of doing like the fun stuff that people see than like running around and working with actual clients and things like that.
Do you, what does your database look like? How many people are in it? And is it mostly people you know, or is it mostly people who attended the seminars?
I don't know how many people are in it without logging on and looking, but I've definitely taught like thousands of people since 2015. So I know it's like a pretty significant database. I know that a lot of those people don't necessarily open my emails, but they get the email.
Right.
And it's a mix of probably like 50% of people that are like cold leads that have come to an event, and then the rest being just people that I know from life, church, school, etc.
Melanie, if you feel comfortable answering this would be awesome. If you don't, I understand as well. But how are you dealing right now with your buyers? Like what are you taking? Are your agents taking them out? Are you keeping social distancing from them? Is it virtual tours? How are you dealing with it right now?
We had to come up together with like a team policy last Monday, and basically just started emailing people that were reaching out and asking for like tour days and stuff, and letting them know that we weren't going to be doing in-person showings, and we're going to do like as much as we can to just like keep it virtual, or like find a different way to get them in where like we're not necessarily putting ourselves in the situation where we're having to like go out with them and be in the car with them, so on and so forth. And we haven't like lost any buyers at this point yet, and I hope that we don't, but I don't know, because I think that there's probably other agents out there that will go on and like do tours as normal, which like I think I totally respect and understand, but I just, from the feedback I was getting from like my two brokers, it just seemed like the thing to do was to like restrict everything as much as possible for right now and follow guidelines that we were getting from.
You said you haven't lost anyone, which is awesome, right? And you probably are not going to, because people are going to want to work with you guys. But what was the response that you got when you did it? Was there anyone that, was it pretty much a blanket response that people respect that and they understand it, or was there anyone giving you pushback?
I mean, everybody for the most part, like we didn't mass communicate this. We just kind of sent it off on like a one-on-one basis. So if we had like one client email us, we would respond to them directly with the policy and just be like, FYI, like this is how things are looking on our end. Let us know if you have any questions. We can try our best to get you into the property, but like as a heads up or whatever. And the feedback from that was pretty positive. People were really understanding, and they were also kind of saying like, yeah, like actually we shouldn't be necessarily going out either. Like maybe we'll table this for a while and like go look at places in a couple weeks. But yeah, I mean, I was up all night the night before we started sending that out, just because I was so upset by the thought of losing business potentially and what it was going to do like long term. And at this point, I feel like now everybody is cracking down. So it's not like we're the only ones at all. And yeah, that makes me feel a lot better.
Okay. So some more questions that popped up. Barry, after her comment about taking a shot at noon, had a question. And Barry, you can unmute yourself as well if you want. Otherwise, I can take it. Just let me know.
Hi.
Yeah, go ahead, Barry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm definitely not drunk yet.
You're expecting me.
I know. It's not possible. My question was going back to when you said, I know you have two buyer's agents who are both great. Something we've struggled with on our team is just, making it fair. Like when you lose the relationship with that client, you're essentially passing them off to your team members. If that client then refers your team member another lead, how do you handle that?
Good question. Then whoever gets the referral gets to work with the buyer or seller. So that has happened a couple times, not a couple times at this point, but many times. And I have no problem being like, yeah, like take it, work with that person. Like I'm not exerting control over like the referrals by any means. And like if their friends or their family are going to buy, like obviously like they get to work with those people. I hope that answers
Very,
that.
very, I can, if you don't mind, I'll step in as well. I mean, I got credit for working with, I think, closing 64 buyers last year. And I didn't personally have one person in my car, right? And then my team gets referred on the buyers a lot. When you have, again, you know, we've talked a lot about systems, right? But you have a system in place when that comes in, and knowing what the expectations are, right? And that, you know, depending on how you're going to compensate that, just have that in writing and have it up front. So there's no, oh, well, this would, you know, just know that that situation is going to come up, and just stand strong on, here's when this happens, here's what's going to happen as far as compensation, level of service, things like that. So just setting that expectation.
And the other thing too is like our splits or their splits like don't change based on if I give them a lead or if they get their own lead.
Right.
So in the beginning, I kind of toyed around with like, okay, like yeah, you get a bigger cut of it if it's your friend, but then if it's my client, then I get the bigger cut. But it just ended up being like kind of messy, and all of our spheres kind of overlap a little bit. So we just stuck to like one split for everybody and just try to get as many leads as possible kind of mindset.
The funnel, right? The leads, you know, all the leads go into a funnel and they get dispersed appropriately, but the compensation is typically the same. So Julie or Jamie, you had a question here, and I see you pop up on the screen. So if you can unmute yourself, that would be awesome.
Yes. Hi. Yeah, so Melanie, my question is, I started out in leasing and I have like a much younger sphere, like 24 to like 26. And I'm finding a lot of my renters still want to keep renting for the next few years, like until they decide to buy. So my whole approach right now is kind of like nurse them through the rentals until they decide to buy. But I'm kind of running into the issue where I don't want them to just see me as like a leasing agent still. So like, how would you approach like your younger sphere? Have you helped them with rentals and stuff, or do you kind of just set yourself as like a buyer's agent?
I like that question, and I can relate because when I started in real estate, I was a senior in college. So obviously everybody I knew, we all went to DePaul. And so like all the DePaul kids were trying to find apartments downtown. And so I spent probably a year like just hustling on rentals. And I don't know that a lot of those renters ever became buyers. I know that's like a thing that everyone says is like, oh yeah, renters become buyers. But I could probably think of like one out of dozens and dozens of renters that actually ended up buying from me. So I don't know if that's encouraging or not, but I think I really had to like start rebranding as like buyer, like somebody that worked with buyers, so that I didn't get stuck in that rental niche.
Yeah.
But now, like to this day, if I get people that are looking for a rental that like reach out to me, I still like keep them in our team. Like one of my team members will work with them, and it's totally fine and it works out great. And then they go on the drip campaigns and they stay connected with us. So I think maybe the difference is like in the beginning when I was doing rentals, I had no system, no CRM. I didn't track any of those people's emails, but now I know enough to like save the email if a renter reaches out and add them to the monthly newsletter and things like that.
For sure. Okay. Awesome. I have a similar story too. I went to DePaul and I started leasing when I was a junior.
Yeah.
Go Blue Demons.
Awesome. Good job, Jamie.
Thank you.
Meg is asking, are people holding listings or going forward with unoccupied as planned? So do you have, Melanie, do you have some listings right now?
We have a couple that are active or on tan, and they're not getting a ton of showings. So I don't know, but they're both on lockbox. So kind of hands off again. And any new listings that we're getting, we're trying to do like the Matterport stuff, which I never have done before, but I think is probably important in this current age.
Cool. Brian Moon asked again, Melanie, do you do Facebook, Instagram ads for open houses? And if so, have you seen positive responses?
Hey, Brian. No, I do not do Facebook or Instagram ads for open houses. I will like post on my Instagram story if I'm doing an open house, but it never really leads to anybody coming that's like a legit potential buyer. It's just like my friends see that I'm doing an open house.
Right. Cool. All right, we're at 12:44 of Sam Paul. I am going to end with you because you have one more question.
Hey, so I wanted to ask, on your webinar, are you live as a video in the webinar that you just did?
Yes.
Okay. And then I guess the follow up to that was, now that you're in this space in a more digital way, this concept of, and I don't know if MailChimp allows you to embed a video because it's not my wheelhouse. But if they do, my thought is, now that they've seen you in person electronically, is maybe adding a layer of video content to the email drip campaigns that you're sending out. So it's not just text, but it actually is interaction in a way, because we are getting so little interaction, that this idea of adding that layer of humanity to it and them getting to see you and sort of be in a space with you in a different way.
Sam has all the good ideas. I didn't think of doing that, but I love that. I think that is very wise and for sure like a good add-on to the emails that are just text.
We're better together if, as peers, we share our talents and we all just raise the bar with each other. I love it. I love sharing. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Sam, thanks for sharing. Guys, that is the end of this session. And Melanie, thank you so much. You dropped some serious knowledge on us. I think everyone got a lot of great stuff out of it. And we appreciate you being here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guys, thanks for all that attended. Tomorrow, we're going to have Barry Levine talking about bulletproofing her database during these times. So hopefully everyone can join and we can keep this going. So it's got great momentum. Appreciate it.
Melanie, you're awesome.
Thanks. Bye.
Good job. Cheers, everyone.